I don't know if there's much to say. Thought you should know. A few days ago, Steven Crowder leaked the manifesto of the trans mass shooter. It got no traction at all. Nashville mayor orders investigation after leak of school shooter's writing. Oh, okay, so there was a leak. Investigate the leak of 3 pages of the manifesto of the school shooter who killed 6 people at the Covenant School in March. Conservative media host Steven Crowder posted the images online Monday, purporting them to be part of the school shooter's manifesto. Then they're probably on Steven Crowder's Twitter, right? It was only 3 pages, not the whole manifesto. He leaked 3 pages of the shooter's journal, not the manifesto. Gotcha. How do we know he didn't just make it up? Because if he made it up, the mayor of Nashville probably wouldn't be calling for an investigation. Oh, here we go. Breaking: Nashville school shooter, or Covenant shooter Audrey Hale's Death Day manifesto targeted, quote, crackers with, quote, white privileges. Many such cases. Death Day. Oh, man. Peak of mental wellness on this individual here, huh? Oh, we've got the big Louder with Crowder stamp on it. That's good. So he's actually the one who got the leak then, yeah. And believes the nervous but excited for the past 2 weeks, several times. Can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. You know, I could have told you that this person was mentally ill and going to do a shooting based on their handwriting alone. This is the handwriting of like a 6-year-old. My only fear is if anything goes wrong, God let my wrath take over my anxiety. Whoa! This person was a Christian. Ooh. Concerning. Is this the same person? Handwriting looks totally different. Those crackers go to private fancy schools with those fancy quackies and sports backpack. Is this khakis? Did they just do the H with an up line that's higher than any other line on the H? Okay. With their daddies, Mustangs, and convertibles. You little shits want to kill all you crackers, bunch of little F slurs, even though this is the word I should be able to say on YouTube, with your white privileges, you F slurs. The funny thing about this breaking news release, whatever, is that this isn't even a little bit interesting. So this person's mentally ill, obviously, but they're also not like conservatives have been crossing their fingers and hoping for some big, like, this is a trans motivated attack. There were even people who pretend to be liberals who were saying that I was responsible for this because by saying that trans people are at threat of genocide, I'm motivating mentally ill, like, Christian convert trans people to do school shootings on babies or something. You know, like there's like an insane degree of sort of like wishful thinking on the part of reactionaries that this would be some kind of big trans motivated thing. And then, like, what's the narrative here? Steven Crowder wants to focus on the fact that he said crackers, but he also said the F slur twice, and he also referred to praying to God. So, like, I guess Christian homophobes did this? Death Day, 9 a.m. Eat breakfast at home, heart. Okay. Wasn't this a trans woman? It was a trans guy. Cherry instantly walked back half of her, calling you a terrorist the moment people... Oh, yeah, because there was a trans would-be mass shooter who named me in her manifesto, and it was to say I was a terrorist. I remember that, yeah. There was a person who got caught with a bunch of weapons at their home and, like, a plan to do a shooting, and people... Look, Vosh, you've been mentioned in the shooter's manifesto, and I'm like, okay, here it is. It's time, finally. All right, let's deal with this, you know? And then I look at the manifesto, and they were calling me a terrorist. Like, it wasn't in any way a positive... Yeah. So, and then there was that one guy on Twitter who was like, over and over again, he was like, how do you've been named in a terrorist's manifesto. And it's like, yeah, because they don't like me. It's like, yeah, but you've been named in a terrorist manifesto. Yeah, because they didn't like me. Yeah, but you've been named in a... So yeah, the discourse is going about as well as it always is. I think it's very funny that chat had to tell me this happened. I see this has a lot of likes on Twitter. I mean, it's got 71K likes, so he's getting some attention off of it. And it must be real, because otherwise there's no reason the Nashville mayor or chief of police would say, you know, I am greatly disturbed by today's unauthorized release of the 3 pages of writing for the Covenant shooter. So it's real. Like, there's no denying that. The only interesting information here, I guess, is that mentally ill people write with children's handwriting, I guess. That's the takeaway from this, I suppose. Look at this. This looks like how 13 Reasons Why would style a notebook owned by a person who was going to do a school shooting. Look at this. Like how would a school shooter how would they do a notebook? Like I bet they'll do like scribbly little ballpoint pen, death day, bleh, you know. I have the same font. You're all school shooters. Sorry. And even then, none of this even mentions being trans, like, at all. You know, if anything, it reads to me more homophobic than it does anti-white. The shooter was white. Vosh, remember, it's only 3 cherry-picked pages. Yeah, which, you know, I don't know the circumstances under which that was leaked to Steven Crowder, but the fact that this is what they chose to show, not very indicative, huh? Really makes you feel like there's nothing in there about being trans. Bottling Sunshine, this is from the note. This is leaked pages from the notebook of the Covenant shooter, the trans guy who shot some kids at that Christian school in Nashville a while ago. You know, the conservatives have been begging and praying that this is like finally an example of a mass shooting done by like some crazy left-leaning trans person, because they know like every like 50 shootings a year or whatever are done by their guys, so they want it to be, you know, shoes on the other foot for once. And they finally released these pages, and it's like, it's nothing. It's like, oh, they're mentally ill. Like, yeah, obviously they did a school shooting. People don't do school shootings if they're mentally well. Vosh, not all mentally ill. Please, we get way too many hate and healthy people with what? I'm not saying all mentally ill people want to shoot up schools. I'm just saying that if you want to shoot up a school, there's a decent chance you're mentally ill. Like, there's probably a correlation there. I'm willing to bet, because girls are born with incredible handwriting. Oh yeah, true. This is very gender affirming, because this was a trans guy, and girls have better handwriting than guys. So that would explain why this looks like shit. You did say that. Please do not hide from your statements. I said all mentally ill people shoot up schools. God damn, I do misspeak a lot, I guess. It's funny because it shatters their narrative that it was a trans shooter attack on Christians, and it's yeah, their big narrative was like, this is a trans person killing Christians because trans people like to kill Christians or whatever. And then in the first no mention of them being trans, and also they mention like, may God God let my wrath take over my anxiety, which kind of makes it sound like he was Christian. Vosh said, you're all mentally ill, in response to, we have handwriting that looks like that. You guys are in VGG chat. Of course you're mentally ill. Get the f off my case. Jesus Christ. This would be a great springboard for properly funding mental health. No. When conservatives talk about like, oh, it's not a gun issue, it's a mental health issue. For what it's worth, for the most part, I agree with them, mostly as a matter of political expediency. There are things we can do to address the severe climate of mental health crisis in this country, whereas dealing with the overabundance of firearms is like a biblically difficult task. We have so many guns in this country that the idea of making them practically unavailable. There is no state, no city in this country where you could not easily get a cheap firearm if you wanted it. You know, even in New York City, even in Los Angeles, you would be able to find it if you wanted to. There's just so many guns. We can do better stuff when it comes to like red flag laws. I think that's true. Red flag laws, waiting periods, that stuff. But in terms of just like making guns unavailable, that's a big hill to climb. In the meantime, we can do more with regards to mental health. But conservatives don't give a shit about mental health. In fact, I mean, you guys remember that vote in Congress where basically every conservative voted against provisions for mental health care in schools? They do not give a shit about mental health. In fact, conservatives want people to be mentally unwell because mental unwellness is like the fuel for their political psychosis. There's a reason why the alt-right and the Nazis and the super far right and the white nationalists online are almost to a man deeply mentally ill. And I don't mean this in like a euphemistic way. I legitimately mean that you get an incredibly clear picture of mental illness from looking at them online. To be fair, there are a lot of mentally ill left-leaning people. The difference being that left-leaning people usually have a culture of understanding and communication about their mental illnesses, and the mental illnesses tend to be more like sympathetic ones. Like, oh, some left-leaning people are depressed. Everyone's depressed. Left-leaning people are more likely to identify it and talk about it because they don't stigmatize mental health the same way right-leaning people do. Whereas right-leaning people are psychopaths and they don't talk about it. They just politicize their mental illness, you know? Like you'll have like these paranoid delusional unironically like neat moding in their house, jerking off to lolly and posting white nationalist memes about how they personally deserve a 16-year-old trad wife, and then talk about how people on the left are the pictures of mental health. Like, these are not well. And the right knows this, and the right wants to weaponize that. They've always wanted to weaponize mental illness, especially male loneliness, because lonely men are the backbone of fascism. Again, sexual insecurity, fascism, so on and so forth. Matt Walsh did try to argue SSRIs don't work on Twitter, and surprisingly, replies were mixed among Kongs. Oh, no. This is not the first time they've done that. Conservatives have been waging a war against mental health for a while, not just in the form of, like, not funding it or keeping healthcare expensive, but also in the form of literally arguing that, like, Adderall and SSRIs are actually detrimental to you. There's no context in which they're good. Conservatives never want you to go to therapy. They just want you to be lonely and miserable and angry, so you'll do your own, like, Christchurch shooting or whatever. Remember, fascism relies on constant fervor, and the only way to produce that fervor is to keep people attending a 24/7 rally. And because that's difficult to maintain in the physical world, you have to build it in the mental world. A fascist's mind has to be a 24/7 rally that keeps them riled up. They must always be thinking of whatever it is that motivates them to the political ends they've arrived at. And, honestly, for a lot of conservatives, that really is just interracial cuckoldry. That really is it. For a lot of them, it's transgender people, because transgender people make them feel weird feelings about the permanence of their own gender and identity. And a lot of them are just terrified of big black cocks stealing away the white women they don't have already. And it's that simple, It seems like it might be complicated, but sometimes it really is just that simple. Saw a vid where someone goes into Matt Walsh's past, and Matt Walsh has ADHD and he hates medication because he thinks he'd be weaker if he took it. Fascist insecurity. First of all, he's almost certainly lying. Nazis love to do this big song and dance about how they are pure. They are pure. They reject. They do not drink. They do not smoke. And then you take a look at the actual Nazis, and they were high on meth, like, all the time. They like to do a big song and dance about how pure they are, but in reality, like, they are massive substance addicts, and in all likelihood, he is as well. Like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a fascist, might be a Nazi, and dude, by all, like, personal reports, apparently has a crippling ketamine addiction. Footage of Hitler on meth. No, literally, no, he was on meth, like, all the time. That's not a joke. Like, literally, like, all the time. The Nazis loved meth. Apparently, there's rampant Adderall use in the ex-offices. There's rampant Adderall use in this stream. Speaking of, I didn't take it this morning. Thank you for reminding me. Did you hear where Twitter staff almost called the cops on Elon for a wellness check after he locked himself in his office for hours and were all worried he was going to kill himself? I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, apparently this was a little while after he acquired Twitter. And he was having a mental health breakdown because nobody likes him. He got to a point where he locked himself in his office, was so upset that the Twitter employees were considering calling a wellness check by the San Francisco police because they thought he was going to self-harm himself, Mesrick said. I think he truly cares about his reputation that he was shocked. What a baby, dude. Look, I'm not like, if you're ever feeling down, you're bad. I'm not saying that or whatever, but, like, dude, he's like a gajillionaire, and he acts like an unlovable loser, and then people don't love him, and then he, like, publicly, like, has a hissy fit and locks himself in his office to the point where his employees are considering calling the police. Embarrassing. Mesrick cited several incidents that led to a spiral for Musk, including getting booed at a Dave Chappelle comedy show and his son's car being attacked. The son's car being attacked thing was never verified. I don't trust Elon for shit. Remember when Musk was on Twitter and he was like, well, in the audio it sounds like people are booing at me, but in reality, it was more like 90% applause, and the camera just only picked up the boos. Yeah, they were saying boo Usk. Yeah, exactly. Musk later fired an engineer who showed him his popularity was declining on the app, the platform report added. Incredible. Impossible to satirize, truly. Even though Chappelle himself said the boos were coming from the cheap back rows. Lol. Chappelle is such a piece of shit, dude. I like this guy LARPs as like some kind of like authentic, down to earth, like real shit comedian for his entire career, and then he plays defense for the richest man on earth by insinuating that the only people who don't like him are angry poor people. What a loser. He did have base Palestine takes though. Honestly, that's probably just because he's Muslim. Like, we know now that the only reason Dave Chappelle ever, like, gave a shit about black issues is because he himself is black, not because he has some kind of broad, consistent, like, progressive attitude towards social issues. Likewise, he probably falls in with that as well. He might also be an anti-Semite, Has he made jokes in the past about like Jews in Hollywood or no? I don't really know. It's hard to say. I'm not very charitable to Chappelle, like at all. He has? Hmm. He's Muslim in the same way Jordan Peterson is a Christian. I'm not saying he's okay. A lot. Okay. Black people converting to being Muslim in the United States has a weird history. And oftentimes it has a lot more to do with black power and anti Semitism than it does with any kind of like authentic Muslim faith, you know? Like the, you know, the like Nation of Islam is not about Islam. I'm not saying every black person who ever converted, like Muhammad Ali, like that was his post-conversion name, right? I don't even remember his pre-conversion name. Like, you know, I'm not saying that he did that because he hates Jewish people or whatever. I'm saying that like historically there's a complicated relationship between Cassius Clay. Okay. Muhammad Ali is like a goated name. There's, you know, there's no going back from that really. He also said bad shit about trans people. He said a lot of bad shit about trans people. Yeah, Chappelle defended Kanye on his Nazi arc. Yeah. Last year on SNL, Chappelle said weird anti-Semite shit in SNL when Kanye was popping off. Yeah, I remember this. Oh, yeah, I remember this. If they're black, then it's a gang. If they're Italian, it's a mob, Chappelle said. But if they're Jewish, it's a coincidence and you should never speak about it. This was after Kanye said he was going DEFCON or DEathCon 3 on Jews and was like Hitler posting. And Chappelle's like, how will I add to this conversation? I'll say that you're not allowed to talk about Jewish cabals in media, you know? Strong feeling that Chappelle is, you know, converted for a, you know, for the same reason a lot of the later Nation of Islam guys converted, which was basically just to be like Blitler, you know. Like he's been reactionary on basically every issue outside of black specific issues. You know, I don't know, man. What no intersectionality does to a mother. But that doesn't. Chappelle went on to talk about the abundance of Jewish people in Hollywood, but that doesn't mean anything he said. There's a lot of black people in Ferguson, Missouri. Doesn't mean they run the place. Chappelle said he could see, quote, if you had some kind of issue, you might go out to Hollywood and start connecting some kind of lines, and you could maybe adopt the illusion that Jews were in show business. It's not a crazy thing to think, but it's a crazy thing to say out loud. Writer Adam Feldman tweeted that Dave Chappelle's SNL monologue probably did more to normalize anti-Semitism than anything Kanye said. Everyone knows Kanye is nuts, Feldman wrote. Chappelle posits himself as a teller of difficult truths. It's worse. Yep. Oh, remember when after he started getting backlash, Dave Chappelle he went to his former high school and did a presentation where he didn't allow them to take their phones in, and he apparently did this weird rambling, like megalomaniacal rant at the students, including like directly shouting at them. And like students complained afterwards, but the administration from the school didn't want to distance themselves from Chappelle because he's like a big celebrity you know? He never lets people have phones at his shows. Yeah, but it was a school, it was at school. Like, it wasn't like a theater that you're attending. Like, it was a school. He donates that school, too, so they want to keep ties. Yeah. Malcolm X became a Sunni Muslim after he left the Nation of Islam. I think he realized African-American Islam is not Islam at all. Yeah, my general impression of, like, both sides of this is to get really suspicious of loud American black groups that purport to be Semitic or Muslim, because both the Nation of Islam types and the Black Hebrew Israelite types do the same thing, which is they deal with the collective trauma of having their identities ripped from them through the transatlantic slave trade by co-opting a politicized version of a Middle Eastern identity and like extrapolating it to their community, where like in you know, slightly different routes there, but the underlying cause seems to be kind of similar, where in both cases you're trying to like call upon some pre-existing legacy and association in the area that you more or less came from, maybe possibly vaguely, and using that as a sort of community strengthener. This shit is everywhere here in Philly thanks to Ghazi Kozo and his ilk. Isn't he in jail at the moment? At the very least, he's waiting trial. As the resident black person, Vosh going to get clipped to shit for this portion. If I said anything wrong, this is true. A whole branch of the NOI broke off and became more traditionally Muslim back in the 60s-ish era. Yeah, for sure. I'm not saying every black Muslim or every black Jew is like that or whatever. I'm just saying that there are underlying tendencies to those movements.